New music from the debut album by the Washington Squares at 102.7. Hello, I'm Pete Fornatale, a disc jockey at WNEW-FM radio in New York City. I'm going to be your guide through the sometimes complicated process of how a recording is produced. We'll follow the steps from recording and mixing in a studio to the molding of a disc in a manufacturing plant. And along the way, we'll visit the place where the recording industry began more than 100 years ago. Let's start with the most important element of a recording session, the music. The Washington Squares are accustomed to spending a lot of time playing music together. They've been playing at concerts and in clubs for several years, and they've been rehearsing the songs they will record in this session for weeks. The two people who will mean the most to the group and to their recording are the producer and the engineer. I talked to veteran producer Steve Katz about his role in the planning and recording process.
A producer's responsibilities basically, to me, fall under two headings, budget and concept. Your concept is pretty much dictated by the budget you have with which to work. Usually, for myself, a record company dictates the budget because it's already been negotiated with the band's manager or with the band. So I am told that I can spend so much in the studio. Conceptually, I sit with the act and I say, here's what we're going to spend, here's what we can do. How are we going to make the best product or best piece of art, however you want to call it. When I speak to the record company, it's product. When I speak to the band, it's what's the best artistic thing we can come up with.
The engineer is part electronics whiz, part musician, and part magician, with a bit of psychologist thrown in. Using the best technology available, he balances the instruments and voices in the recording and mixing sessions. Engineer Rob Dimmitt's responsibilities cover a wide range of technical and non-technical decisions.
An audio engineer is responsible for selecting and setting up and using all of the equipment that's involved in the recording process, which will include microphones, the console, and the tape machines. He'll take care of the technical side of things throughout the entire process, from the initial setup through the various recording sessions and on through the mixing of the final tape.
The relationship that a producer has with an engineer is one of total trust. I mean, you're not only living together in a situation over a period of time, and a lot of time, but the relationship is such that the engineer should know what the producer wants, and the producer should know how the engineer likes to go about getting what he wants. And usually, the less that's said during the recording process between the engineer and the producer, the better the relationship. It's based on trust as much as a marriage is based on trust.
It takes a lot of time, effort, and concentration for the band, the engineer, and the producer to get the sound they want. And it's the studio manager's job to see that they have everything they need to do their jobs. That's why Terry McMillan, Director of Sales and Marketing for Kampo Cultural Center, plans carefully before the session even begins.
We're very big on pre-production meetings here, where the client sits down with the engineer who he or she is going to be working with, and possibly the producer, and possibly me, depending on what the requirements are. If it's somebody we know and somebody we've worked with before, it's not so stringent. And we go through every possible problem that we can possibly figure out. What kind of tape you're going to use, what flux you need. Our engineers will come up with every technical glitch that they think might be a problem. We'll solve the problems in that planning session if it's at all possible.
When all the rehearsing and planning is done, the next stop is the studio. This may look like just another room, but there's more to it than meets the eye. It has to do with what meets the ear, or acoustics. The physical qualities of a recording space change the way the music sounds.
Probably the most important factor in the acoustics of a recording studio is the amount of the degree of liveness or deadness of the room. By liveness, I'm referring to reflectiveness of the surfaces, and deadness would describe a surface that tends to absorb more of the sound. One of the reasons we selected this particular studio for recording the Washington Squares is that it offers what's referred to as variable acoustics. There are panels located in the walls and ceilings which can be turned to offer either a highly reflective surface, a hard surface, or a more absorbent surface on the opposite side. An advantage to that in this situation is that the acoustic guitars can be better isolated from one another while we're recording. When more of the sound is absorbed by the walls, less of it is reflected to be picked up by microphones on other instruments. Another thing which allows me to get better isolation between instruments within the room is movable baffles, which have absorbent surfaces, very similar to the wall panels that we're using. Well, in addition to the wall panels, the absorbent surfaces, and the baffles that I've talked about, other things that will help get isolation are mic placement. Different microphones have different pickup patterns so that they tend to pick up sounds from one direction and not from another direction. The three most common pickup patterns for microphones in the recording studio are omnidirectional, which picks up signal from all directions, somewhat like the human ear, unidirectional or cardioid pickup pattern, which tends to pick up signal from one direction and not from other directions. And the third is bidirectional microphone, which picks up sound from two directions and tends to reject sound arriving at the mic at a right angle to those two directions. Those pickup patterns are very useful in a recording session in that they will allow me to pick up signal that I want to record on a particular channel and avoid picking up signal from other instruments across the room.
Each instrument has its own miking problems, and these problems need to be considered when planning where to place the mics.
Okay, Lauren, could I hear your guitar alone, please? Okay, I think I need to move the mic. The first thing that I'll do in miking a guitar for the Washington Squares is to go in and listen to the guitar in the room, and usually I'll put my ear in pretty close to it and listen for a spot on the guitar where I think the sound is pretty close to what we want to be hearing in the control room. And that's where I'll put the microphone. After we've listened to that sound in the control room a little bit, I may go out and move the microphone a little further away or move it to a slightly different position on the body of the guitar. Well, once all the microphones are set up in the recording studio, I'll go back into the control room and sit down at the console and start setting levels. What a recording console is essentially is a sort of central traffic controller which allows me to take multiple sources of signal, in this case microphones, and route those signals to various destinations, in this case the tracks of the multi-track tape recorder. The first thing I'll do for the Washington Squares guitar that I'm recording is to assign that microphone signal to one track of the tape recorder using the switching matrix at the top of the module. The switching matrix is really just a group of switches which allows me to select the destination of the signal that I brought in through the module. Once that's